We begin today's wrestling news and rumors video with some potentially big news regarding former Raw and SmackDown Women's Champion, Bayley. Now, as most of you are likely well aware, Bayley has been missing from WWE television for nearly a year, with Bayley last being seen in WWE in the early summer of 2022. With Bayley unfortunately having to miss out on a SmackDown Women's Championship opportunity at Money in the Bank last year. And since then, Bayley has been nowhere to be seen or heard from on television, with there not being a clear timetable on when Bayley would be returning to action in WWE. Bayley did suffer from a torn ACL last year, and this definitely is a pretty serious injury that would require an extended period of time off from WWE. But most wrestling fans have been patiently waiting to hear any news or rumors regarding Bayley's return, and most feeling like Bayley is needed greatly in the WWE Women's Division right about now following the showcase of the Immortals, WrestleMania 38. However, Bayley has stirred up the wrestling community recently with a few potentially cryptic tweets, with the first one reading, quote, "in my own time zone," and the second tweet having the caption, quote, "because of you," with most fans feeling like Bayley is subtly teasing her return to WWE, especially with the amount of questions, concern, and hype from fans that Bayley has obviously been getting on social media over the last few months. While it's unknown exactly when Bayley will be making her comeback to WWE to wrestle again, considering Bayley's once again teasing fans over her return, it's likely that WWE are in the process of planning Bayley's return. And this would be in line with the typical amount of time a superstar needs to take off after suffering an injury like a torn ACL. Again, most fans are really looking forward to Bayley's return to the women's division in WWE. And if you had to choose, which band would you like to see Bayley make her return on? Monday Night Raw, where Bayley could be a challenger for Bianca Belair's Raw Women's Championship, or Friday Night SmackDown, where Bayley would be potentially feuding with Charlotte Flair or Ronda Rousey for the SmackDown Women's Championship? Let us know. Now, our next bit of news is regarding one half of the current women's tag team champions in WWE, Sasha Banks. By all means, it's pretty well established in the eyes of fans that Sasha Banks is a top-level women's division superstar for WWE, and a performer who deserves to be featured in and around the women's title scene. But recently, WWE have sort of taken a step back on Sasha Banks' push, and instead decided to feature the legit boss in the women's tag team division alongside Naomi, and former WWE writer Vince Russo clearly isn't a fan of this pairing of Sasha Banks and Naomi, and quite simply, Sasha Banks being involved in any sort of tag team in WWE, with Vince Russo feeling like Sasha Banks is too big of a star for seemingly unimportant mid-card storylines like this, as well as former Raw Women's Champion Rhea Ripley. Here's what Vince Russo had to say on the matter in a recent interview with Sportskeeda Wrestling. Quote, "I swear, bro, out of all of these people, we said Rhea Ripley looks like a star. I would also say that Sasha Banks looks like a star. On top of that, she was in The Mandalorian. That's a huge deal. I don't know why they would want to put her in a tag team. I don't know why they'd want to put Rhea Ripley in a tag team. These are individual stars. Once you put them in a tag team, it diminishes their status. That's why I go back to, did Sasha piss somebody off? She should not be in a tag team. She's a legitimate star and main eventer. She should be booked that way." Now, when this news started to go around regarding Vince Russo's thoughts on the way Rhea Ripley and even more specifically Sasha Banks are being booked, a lot of fans seem to agree with Vince, and that Sasha Banks is being quite misused right now in WWE, and should be feuding for the Women's Championship. Sasha Banks recently took a surprise loss to Liv Morgan on last week's episode of Friday Night SmackDown, a loss that caught many fans completely off guard, with many feeling as though Sasha Banks should not be taking losses to the likes of Liv Morgan. Of course, Liv Morgan's fans were happy to see that massive win, but for Sasha's fans out there, the reaction was definitely far from being positive. Some fans seem to feel like Sasha Banks could be on her way out of WWE in the relatively near future and transition into Hollywood. But Sasha clearly still has that love and passion for WWE and professional wrestling. So fans can only hope that WWE will begin to book Sasha Banks better in the near future and utilize Sasha to her fullest ability, which is certainly at a very high level. Now, on this week's episode of Monday Night Raw, Rey Mysterio was supposed to wrestle against Veer Mahaan, but the scheduled match was abruptly changed to Veer versus Rey's son, Dominic Mysterio, instead, with a lot of fans wondering why Rey Mysterio was mysteriously absent from Raw this week, and if there's any reason to be concerned over Rey's status in WWE. Well, one of our sources, Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer Radio, confirmed some noteworthy news regarding why Rey Mysterio missed Raw this week, and was effectively replaced by his son Dominic against Veer. According to Dave Meltzer, Rey Mysterio suffered a medical issue, hence why he was not on Raw this week. Here's what Dave Meltzer had to say on the matter. Quote, "He's a medical issue. It's not false advertising or they changed their mind. He was unavailable tonight. So they put Dominic in the place and Dominic just got destroyed. So they could probably do Rey in a week or two." With the way Dave Meltzer finished off by saying that they could probably do Rey Mysterio in a week or two, thankfully it doesn't look as though Rey Mysterio is dealing with anything too serious, and will seemingly be able to return to action in WWE on Monday Night Raw in a couple of weeks. Clearly, WWE are planning for the Mysterios to be Veer's first big feud in WWE on the main roster. And there's no doubt that Vince is counting on Rey Mysterio to help put over their new rising star in Veer Mahaan. The Tribal Chief and the current undisputed WWE Universal Champion, Roman Reigns, is clearly on the top of the mountain in WWE as we speak. But despite just getting arguably the biggest win of his WWE career at WrestleMania 38 by defeating Brock Lesnar to unify the WWE and Universal Championships, surprisingly enough, it doesn't seem like WWE really have any solid plans in place for Roman Reigns right now, which will definitely shock fans. One of our sources, Andrew Zarian of the Mat Men podcast, has revealed that as of right now, there are no clear plans or direction for Roman Reigns moving forward in WWE. Here's what Andrew had to say regarding the surprising lack of plans for the head of the table. Quote, "As far as I know, and this is something I was told, it hasn't been decided yet on how they're doing this, like the concept of how they're going to do this unified title thing. I don't think they've decided if he's going to be on Raw every week or every other week. It hasn't been set yet. They're working all of this out right now on how they're going to play this out." Now, some fans speculate that WWE don't plan for Roman Reigns to be the unified WWE Universal Champion for very long, and that WWE will be having Roman Reigns possibly lose one of the World Championships, likely the WWE Championship, so that Monday Night Raw has its own World Champion again. But who knows? WWE may simply plan to keep up with the whole unified title storyline with Roman Reigns. And lots also feel like Vince is planning for Reigns to soon unveil a new undisputed WWE Universal Championship title belt in the near future. So time will only tell how this whole thing plays out. But it's definitely noteworthy that as of right now, WWE are simply booking things on the fly, and don't have any real plans or direction in place when it comes to the undisputed champ, Roman Reigns. So Roman's status with WWE is quite unclear at this point, despite being in such a major storyline.